All right, we're back for live coverage of the TCG Player Lorcana Invitational Qualifier. I'm Tandy, joined by Bomat. So hi, Bomat.
Hi, Bo Matt.
We got one round in the books. How many players do we have today, Taryn? Can you tell me? All right, we have 31 players. That means we're going to be playing 5 rounds of Swiss and the top 8, where we're going to crown a champion, and that winner is going to be entered into our Invitational next week at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio. That's going to be the TCG Player Lorcana Invitational, hosted by Apex Games. It's going to be a good time.
Right, we're gonna have a bunch of experienced Lorcana players, but experienced Magic players. 16-player event, jamming it together next weekend. I'm really looking forward to that. But first, we have to find out who one of those players is going to be.
All right, well, let's head on down to the feature match area when those players are ready. They've been waiting on us a little bit because of our tech difficulties, but looks like we're mostly done with those. Cross fingers, hopefully. My favorite deck so far in Chapter 1 Constructed is the Amber Steel Stitch Blitz deck that Nicholas Rausch used to win our Invitational Qualifier last week. What is your favorite deck in the meta right now?
Well, I don't know if I'd say in the meta, but the deck I've been enjoying the most is a Sapphire Amethyst deck. Kind of a little bit like the Sapphire deck we saw last round, trying to ramp with Mickey, Detective Mickey, and then play friends on the other side. And I've really been enjoying Maleficent Uninvited, like we just saw last round, as a great threat in Sapphire. See if anyone's trying to win with Sapphire. And here we go with two of the best decks in the meta. What's our matchup looking like?
All right, on the left, we have Patrick Sweeney with Amber Steel versus Dagan White on your right, playing Ruby Amethyst. This is round number 2, and we are just about to be underway. As these players are finished mulliganing, we'll see how the opener is going to start. It looks like our deck lists are slightly off. On the right, it looks like we're going to be doing Emerald Amethyst aggro. We'll get that updated for you in just a moment. And on your left, that's not Amber Steel. That's going to be it's going to be Ruby Amethyst on your left versus Amethyst Emerald aggro on your right.
All right. This should be interesting. I love to see these Amethyst aggro decks. Leading off with Olaf. Actually, a threat that's not going to be able to be taken down by the Sergeant Tibbs. Let's see if our player on the right can get off to a fast start.
All right, one thing I want to point out on the Olaf side of things, this one cost 1/3. It is essentially an aggressive character to start things off with. It only has 1 strength, but strength only really matters when you're rumbling in combat. It has nothing to do with
Right.
how quickly you push towards the end game, and the 3 willpower means that the goons from your opponent, the Sergeant Tibbs, the Lilo, or the Stitch New Dog, these are essentially just gonna not be able to trade up into your Olaf basically ever.
Right. I love seeing Olaf getting played like this. Exactly like you said, strength is not actually an aggressive attribute, and we see willpower come up all the time. Uh, a card like Olaf is not going to die to these goons. It's not going to die to grab your sword. And we're just going to get our lore and our damage dice fixed here.
Yeah, I think our spotter might be looking at another match, so we'll get that fixed in just a sec. But Sergeant Tibbs does churn on in to the Olaf. They each take 1 damage. We're currently sitting at 0-0. Game number 1. Both of these players are 1-0. And here is a Peter Pan 3-drop from Emerald. So 3/2 with evasive.
Right, and strictly speaking, that Olaf should also have 2 damage on it. But looks like it would die to either of these goons either way. Player on the left leading off with Aladdin here. And is
we're
now
going to
going
use
to take care of this Olaf.
Yeah, Archimedes does take down the Olaf. Now, Patrick Sweeney, it looks like we're maybe playing a more aggressively slanted Ruby Amethyst deck because we are playing multiple different types of goons with Sergeant Tibbs and Archimedes. It'll be interesting to see exactly what the build looks like. Maybe more aggressive with Pongo, Goofy 5-drop that has evasive, things like that.
Right, and we talked about that one strength maybe being less important on Olaf, but we are getting a little bit punished here with the double goons being able to take care of Olaf without either trading off. And Han's a pretty good follow-up for Emerald player, going to be able to threaten some damage and maybe trade off for two of the Amethyst players' characters.
All right, we're gonna go question 1, 2, 3 from Patrick Sweeney.
Yeah, not a lot you can do about that Peter Pan, but also no follow-up for Ruby Amethyst.
I believe the lore count right now is 4-0 on Patrick Sweeney's side. That's what I see on the life pad next to the thing.
I believe the Olaf quested though.
Yeah, but I think it got drained from the Aladdin.
Right. Good point. All right. We see our players. It looks like they're clarifying their names. We'll make sure we have that right on the graphic.
Yeah, I think what ended up happening is we're watching a different match than our spotter.
Right.
But hopefully that'll get situated in just a sec. So we're gonna quest here for 4. Hans questing for 3, and the Peter Pan questing for 1. Just gonna put Dagon up to 4, and I believe we're at 4 all.
Right. And our Amethyst Emerald player going to be looking to get in some points before a Be Prepared can come down. And this is a great way to do that in Cusco. Really putting on the pressure. It's going to be a few more turns until the Cusco is able to be cleanly answered. But as soon as it quests for 3, a couple of these 2/2s are going to be able to answer it.
Wow, well, there it is. Heroic Outlaw. This is terrifying.
Yeah, this is really the worst case scenario. The Aladdin Heroic Outlaw here is going to be able to trade off for that Hans, take some lore away, even keep this clock going for Ruby Amethyst, threatening to race the aggro deck here. Thanks to Aladdin.
All right, that's going to put Patrick Sweeney up to 8. Can we get this manually updated, Mr. Director, or something? Because the lore's been wrong all game. We got 8 on Patrick Sweeney's side, and I believe we're down to 2 on Logan Peterson's side, thanks to the swing from the Heroic Outlaw. Peter Pan's going to trade with the Aladdin. Cusco now can quest. I believe that's going to send us up to 5 since the Heroic Outlaw.
All right, and Logan looks like has a John Silver that he could deploy here, but I kind of agree with this. John Silver would not really be doing it here, and we're going to try to draw 2 cards instead. Maybe put out a little more pressure in these couple turns before Be Prepared. And that's pretty good. A Cheshire Cat.
Yeah, Cheshire Cat does threaten to banish anything that hits it, so that's nice.
And this Cusco could be answered by the Goons. Would have gotten that 3 lore, though. Instead, it's going to be a Maui.
Can he use the Maui to trade there instead of the 2 Goons? I'm not sure that I like it, but Michael Hoskins, I do believe, is a bit more aggressive in his build, so it seems like we're just playing that route. Just trade 1 for 1 on the Cusco. I think that's reasonable.
Right, and even if the deck might not be super aggressive, we're in kind of an aggressive position. We've already gotten a bunch of lore getting off the ground here, and trading off this Maui and keeping these Goons to keep questing. Logan's gonna have to maybe answer those at some point. Though here is Jasper, which is pretty good at winning races if it's able to stop the opponent from questing. So we'll see if Michael is actually able to cross the finish line, as that's what his plays seem to be leading towards.
All right, Jasper into sorry, not Rapunzel. It's Pascal, Rapunzel's companion. We're gonna go double hit into the Cheshire. It only banishes the second thing that challenges it, not both, right?
I'm actually not sure. We will clarify and get that corrected if it's been resolved.
And this character is challenge and banish. Banish the challenging character. All right, that's also another mistake. We're gonna maybe try to get that one fixed. If we could try to pause. I mean, they're already flying. I don't know. This is so hard, but Only one of those characters was supposed to be banished in combat, but we're 2 full turns away from it now.
All right. I don't think that much. Maybe, but anyway, the cat's back in play. And our players clarifying things between each other. As long as we agree, that should be fine. The Jasper is going to target that Sergeant Tibbs and keep it from questing.
We are in the Wild West when it comes to tournament regulations and rules and stuff. I'm not sure how to do backups.
Right.
I'm not sure how to do that kind of thing. So I think at this juncture, just being more friendly oriented, like if a backup needs to happen, it's like pseudo backup. It's like pseudo, just as best you can. No feel bads for the kids,
Right. As long as our players are happy with the outcome, that's going to be the best we can do.
And all right, 7. Looks like we're going for a be prepared. All 3 characters from Peterson going to go down. And now we're going to go back Peterson's way and see if he can redeploy something big here. We know he has the John Silver.
Right. And adding the Amethyst to this Emerald Aggressive deck, he was able to get down that Friends on the other side to try to keep some gas going here. And a more aggressive deck might not have any characters left after that Be Prepared. But the Jasper, not a great threat, and it especially doesn't look great against this Elsa. We're going to make sure that Jasper is exerted as it's supposed to be. If we can get a judge in there. And we see in Logan's hand that John Silver actually going to be all right here. Going to slow down the Elsa. And Logan actually has 2 characters in play right now that can keep Elsa from questing. So it's possible he's able to squeak out a win in this race.
Yeah, Elsa's probably going after the Jasper anyway. It's a pretty solid trade, but this is going to make it somewhat vulnerable to the John Silver if John Silver wants to get in there. But, I kind of like using the Genie on the job to bounce the next thing from Hoskins, but it looks like there is no next thing from Hoskins, so I'm curious how this is going to play out over the next few turns.
Right, but also the problem with Ruby Amethyst is once you get to this point in the game, a lot of their most threatening characters you really don't want to bounce. Sure, Michael might end up spending a whole turn playing the Elsa, but you're also not questing after the Elsa comes down.
Right.
So we're just going to take care of that with the John Silver and see if we ever get a good target for this Genie on the job.
All right, here comes another Elsa, freezing both of these characters here. Logan could play the Genie to bounce it, and then basically the exact same thing would happen next turn that happened this turn. But if you're Peterson, that's actually not that big of a deal, I think. I'd probably go ahead and Genie it.
Right, another option. All right, looks like we're instead just going to play this Rafiki, really trying to find a good moment for the Genie. But also, we have enough characters now that we do have to be worried about a Be Prepared.
All right, we're going to play Cauldron. We're going to look at the top 2, put one on the bottom. It looks like we have a Be Prepared that we can sing. Play a Magic Mirror. We're going to draw a card.
I really like this careful sequencing from Michael here. Knows he could play all these cards and activate the mirror if he wants to, so he's just going to make sure to look at as many cards as possible before making a decision. And we are going to hold on to this Be Prepared for at least a turn.
Okay, going to go back Logan Peterson's way. See if he wants anything to do with challenging the Elsa with the Rafiki, or if he just wants to quest. My guess is we're going to trade with the Rafiki just to get it off the table.
All right, there we go. Monkey down.
I wonder if Genie comes down just to be another threat, because the bounce is optional. But no, looks like we're going to go Pascal. Now Hoskins in a tough spot. Your opponent's at 15 lore. They're threatening 3. If you don't have something with Rush here, like a Maui, to challenge the Flynn Rider, I mean, that's a lot of lore next turn. You're getting dangerously close to dying.
Right, and uh, if Logan is, you know, has a read that there might not be a be prepared. Oh, this is a really interesting play. So Logan had two options there, well, a few options, but one of them was ink the befuddle and deploy the genie, but chooses instead to return the Flynn to his hand and play it readied, uh, so that neither Rafiki or Maui can take care of the Flynn. So
Yeah,
Logan is kind of restricting the number of answers that Michael could have to this board.
I like that play a lot. That's something that our director actually Taryn did to me one time with the one drop Lilo. But here we're just gonna go for the 9-drop Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. We're gonna chew up the Flynn Rider. Top two, we're gonna leave Maui on top. Back Logan Peterson's way. Genie on the job. John Silver in hand. We're gonna quest for one.
And then which six drop? So the John Silver comes down and gives the Maleficent Reckless. This is maybe a little risky. A removal spell on the John Silver would mean that the Pascal gets challenged because it loses evasive as soon as there are no other characters in play. As Logan tries to cross the finish line.
Yeah, I like the play though. I think bouncing the Maleficent is mediocre. Here's Ursula. We're going to drain one lore, so this is going to put us even further away from winning. But this monstrous dragon can't challenge the Rapunzel. No. Oh, and we can't quest with a dragon too. So here's Cheshire Cat. This is actually starting to get really scary for Hoskins here.
Right. If the John Silver, yeah, looks like we're just gonna quest with everything and get that lore. Wonder what John Silver is gonna choose. So Maleficent has Reckless and bouncing Ursula. Interesting. So Logan values the tempo here. He's saying, yes, when you play that Ursula, you're gonna get a card, you're gonna remove a lore from me, but that's gonna be most of what you're doing on your turn. Ooh.
Yeah, and we're going to sing Be Prepared. And Michael Hoskins was setting this up for a few turns. Now we have the Ursula, which can come back down and basically heal one by stealing a lore and drawing a card.
Right, and this was kind of the worst case scenario for Logan's play. Is Michael just gets to recycle that Ursula, and now has a threat to start closing the game, gets more resources, and this is the spot where it could be hard for Emerald to close things out without specifically a card like Cusco.
There's Hans, that quest for 3. So without direct removal on it, that might actually just win the game next turn.
And how
Bring it
much
back.
removal could Ruby Amethyst deck really have, right?
Look, a lot of it is challenge based with Maui, Gaston. You need Dragonfire or be prepared to directly move it or some way to
Ooh.
tap it down.
And we see this Cauldron able to leave a Dragonfire on top, which Michael could spend this turn drawing with the mirror and then playing on the Hans.
Some people absolutely love Ursula's Cauldron. It's like their favorite card in the whole game. Here, I think that the believers are winning.
Right, exactly. Michael was able to sneak it in very well, used all his ink on a turn to play that in a mirror and draw a card, and has activated it, what, 5 times at this point? And if you're Logan, that's very threatening. Your opponent has had kind of the best half of all the top cards in their deck at this point, and you can really see it happening. Michael has had, the best play on most of the turns since that Cauldron came down.
All right, but we are threatening lethal again. Here's Cheshire Cat and Olaf. This is 3 lore. Peterson at 17. We'll see if Hoskins has another answer. Finds another Dragonfire. That should be all she wrote.
Right, and this game we really saw the power of Ursula. Removing both of those lore will have mattered. Drawing the cards is great, but really just being a clock. I think we're gonna see this Ursula add up to 9 lore this game and finish the game all on its own. Which is really what you need against a deck like Emerald, is to actually get your own clock on the board.
Yeah, the Ruby Amethyst deck is just extremely good at making sure that your opponent can't quite win the game. They definitely can't win the game one threat at a time. The easiest way to beat the Ruby Amethyst deck is to swarm them early because they really need to hit Ink 7 for Be Prepared. And if you can pressure them a bunch so that once they be prepared, you only need a few more points of lore, then that's the way to beat them. But, if you're really close but only playing one threat a turn, you're just going to get demolished by Dragonfires and things like that.
Right. So Michael takes down game one with both Ursula and her cauldron as we shuffle up for game two.
As these players are shuffling up for game two, I want to take a moment and shout out our sponsors here on the Apex series. Big shout out to Ultimate Guard. Ultimate Guard is going to be one of our sponsors next week for the Invitational, and they also sponsor Apex Gaming on our Magic side of things as well with their awesome Sidewinder deck boxes, Boulder deck boxes, as well as the 6 Katana sleeves. And those are the ones I'm always after. Also, big shout out to TCG Player. They're our flagship sponsor for our invitational that we'll be holding next week at Apex Gaming in Caldwell, Ohio. It looks like my director says the guy in the bandana and the person to his left, I think it's Mr. Pink Hair, I'm not sure, but maybe it's someone else, drove 11 hours for this event. They are gamers. They came to qualify for the Invitational next week. Let's see if one of them can take it down.
Absolutely. And Logan in the bandana, pinning his hopes on this Emerald Amethyst aggro deck. And let's see if the card draw and aggression is enough to take down Ruby Amethyst in these next two games. He got close that game. Had a few awkward turns where his cards didn't really line up right, but was still, threatening lethal multiple turns in a row.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do against Ruby Amethyst. Like you have to put them in a spot where they have to have the answer every single turn. The problem comes with that their deck is able to regularly do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Magic Mirror keeps them flush on resources, keeps them churning. Some builds have the Ursula's Cauldron, so they're able to find more specific answers more quickly. And if you're, resource rich, something like Ursula's Cauldron is awesome, right? Like if you already have Magic Mirror going, it's just this nice little engine, card selection engine to combine with the card advantage engine. Big shout out to Tanks for the new sub. Appreciate you. Welcome. I'm Tandy of the Lost Boys, joined by my good friend Bomac Courier, also of the Lost Boys. We are bringing you live coverage here of this invitational qualifier for the TCG Player Invitational that we'll be holding next weekend. The winner of this event will be qualified for that $5,000 invite-only event. We're in game number 2 of round 2. Michael Hoskins up a game with Ruby Amethyst, and we're underway with a Pascal on turn 1 from Logan Peterson's Emerald Amethyst aggro deck.
Right. This is a great start. It's going to line up well if Michael has any 1-drops in hand. The Pascal and unopposed here is going to get likely at least 2 lore for Logan. If he has a 2-drop to follow this up, this is kind of the ideal start. But it looks like he might not. Thinking about what to ink.
Did mulligan 4 cards, maybe looking for that more aggressively slanted start, but it does have Olaf here at least to protect the Pascal, so that's nice.
Right. This is, pretty close to what Logan wants to be able to do. Is going to be able to follow this up with, looks like, both a 3-drop and a 4-drop. And Michael, this is where it can get difficult for Ruby Amethyst, is having all the right answers in the early game. Late game when you've been able to activate your Cauldron and draw a bunch of cards, you can really line things up perfectly. But if Logan is able to ask the questions earlier rather than later, it can put Michael in a bind.
All right, ink number 3 for Peterson. Here comes a Jasper. We're going to quest for one with the Pascal. Going to be very difficult for Hoskins to get the Pascal off the table this turn. And no Olaf quest because we don't want it to get eaten with the Gaston for free. We'll see if Hoskins has another defensive play. We're going to ink a Broom. Here's 3. And there's a 3-drop Elsa. This one, we'll get this one on the screen for you, but this one can exert itself to exert an opposing character, essentially freezing it so that things like Gaston can challenge. This is Elsa, the Snow Queen. This one is usually used for the big shift on the 8 drop, but sometimes using it to freeze an opposing character is quite nice.
Right, and it actually lines up pretty well here. Coming down after the Gaston, we saw Logan careful not to quest with the Olaf last turn as to not give Gaston a good trade. But Elsa is, yeah, here we see uh, Elsa was going to be able to exert that Olaf and give the Gaston a good challenge anyway. So Logan just decides, it's going to be happening. I might as well get my lore out.
Okay, well, that is the threat of the Elsa is often stronger than the Elsa itself because it just means that Peterson has to play in a very different way. We're going to see
Right.
if Hoskins can punish him for it. Pascal is relatively safe because it does have evasion as long as you have another character on the table. Let's get Pascal on the screen when we can. This one drop is, in my opinion, defining for Amethyst. Amethyst actually has a one drop, the quest for 2, one of the Maleficents, biding her time. Right. She is thought of to be as the more aggressive one, but Pascal having evasion, evasive by having another character on the table means that as long as you have another character down, your opponent can't really challenge it unless they have an evasive character of their own, and there's not a ton of those running around at the moment.
Right. And we saw, early in the first chapter, Maleficent and Lilo looked very threatening, but people very quickly adapted. And now we see almost every deck, including some number of goons. Those one cost 2/2s. So Maleficent gets, a little less consistent. She, against a lot of opponents, can only quest once, maybe twice. Pascal can actually get in quite a few more times if you sequence your cards correctly.
Yeah, Pascal's easily, in my opinion, the best Amethyst one drop, and it's close to being the best one drop in the game. My pick for best one drop in the game is currently Hook Forceful Duelist, followed very closely by Stitch New Dog because of the shift from Stitch Rockstar. Right. But Pascal Rapunzel's Companion is very similar in that regard.
Right, especially we see paired up with this other evasive threat in Tinkerbell. Logan just has 3 lore going here that's pretty difficult for about half of Michael's deck to interact with.
All right, Peterson here can play Hans, but if might want to protect that from the Elsa plus Maui next turn,
Right. That's the threat of the Elsa, like you were talking about, is gonna make Logan think twice about deploying most of these things. He's really a little sad here that he's not able to kind of close the door with a Cusco on this turn. That's really what you would be looking for. And it looks like Michael's hand is full of answers.
Yeah, Logan not even deploying the Hans, maybe wanting to use it as a guaranteed ink next turn so he can play Genie on the job. I don't hate that play.
Right, but we also see, Genie on the job is a pretty good card, but doesn't line up super well against a card like Be Prepared, because it takes so much ink to play. Your opponent is going to be able to answer it a lot of the time in this matchup.
And here we see the House of Cards crumble. We have a Dragonfire on the on one of the characters, and we have 2 challenges, and Rapunzel is now Dunzo.
All right, see how Logan wants to answer. Genie at this point, if that can be one of the ways to combat it, Be Prepared, is just to get down one threat and keep questing with it. But instead, we're going to see Hans try to put a better clock onto the table instead.
Hoskins is not super far behind here on the board. I think basically at parity, in hand much further ahead, and on lore a little bit behind, but can catch up nicely. Looks like we have Dragonfire in hand to just take care of this Hans since it's questing for 3, and we're going to keep churning up ourself up to 2, and we're going to start pushing towards victory condition. Peterson, Genie on the job, bouncing either of these characters is not that great. I might want to go ahead and just bounce the Elsa. Elsa looks like it's going to be annoying for the foreseeable future, and you're not going to be able to deal 1 damage to it very easily anyway, so I would recommend just getting this Genie down and just bouncing it.
Right. This Genie is unlikely to win the game, but I think we are at the point in the game where it can get a good amount of lore down. We've already seen two Be Prepareds out of Michael, and we're one or two turns off of Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. Uh, so there are very few cards in Michael's deck that can cleanly deal with this genie at this point in the game. But eventually, he will certainly find some of them.
All right, Maleficent Sorceress gonna come down and draw a card, and then we're gonna quest for one with the Aladdin. We'll see if Peterson wants to eat the Aladdin with the Evasive Genie or just wants to quest for two.
All right, it doesn't look on this board like a shifted Aladdin would be too threatening. So Pearson just questing instead, halfway there, and I think we saw a key card for Michael here. He just drew Ursula, which is, in my opinion, exactly what he's looking for. His opponent's board isn't super threatening, so he's able to get this clock down and threaten to start actually winning the game himself. This genie might not even be enough.
All right, we'll see if Peterson has anything else to follow it up with. I know a Befuddle in hand, kind of rotting. We can use that to bounce our own thing, but at this point, doesn't seem great. We're gonna challenge the Aladdin just to knock it off. It's an interesting play from Logan, but notices that he's losing the race in a significant way and needs to challenge a little bit. Here's a Cheshire Cat. This with Genie quests for 2 next turn.
All right, we saw in the mid game there, or in the early game, Logan wasn't really able to get down many cards that quested for multiple lore. So he had characters that lined up fairly well, but wasn't able to get close to actually threatening a win as we get to this mid game. And Ruby Amethyst is just going to start taking over it. They have their own clock down now, and Maleficent is almost just going to be all she wrote, and she takes care of the genie.
Yeah, that Monstrous Dragon going to basically eat Genie straight up. And now with Ursula active, there's just so much potential lore on the table for Hoskins, and Emerald Amethyst does not do a great job of fighting back. I think that this is a maybe the most indicative of what a bad matchup looks like in Lorcana, where this Ruby Amethyst deck, it's not great at dealing with rushes of characters from the early turns, but it's very good at dealing with like these 1-for-1 big 3, 4, 5 drops. And that's where Emerald Amethyst's strength lies, is the 3, 4, 5 drops, whereas most other decks that are aggressive, their strength lies in the 1, 2 drops.
Right, and you can, try to line up your threats against your answers, playing cards like Cusco with Ward or Genie with Evasive, but each of those is only protected from half of the Ruby Amethyst deck, and the other half just gets to take care of it, either by challenging or banishing.
Yeah, and if your stuff doesn't quest for enough, they can just race you with the Ursulas too.
Exactly. This has been a really impressive match for Ursula. Great card.
If you're Hoskins here, I mean, you're winning the race. I would just quest for 6 up to 15. You're threatening lethal next turn. This Cheshire Cat, not really a huge deal. You can go ahead and deploy another character without fear of getting hit by a sweeper or something from your opponent.
Right. This is just way too many threats to answer, even if Emerald Amethyst had any answers, which it more or less doesn't.
Yeah, has a couple of copies of Mother Knows Best, some Genie on the Jobs, but these are just bounce effects. These aren't sweepers. Amethyst is really good at drawing cards and playing things that draw cards, but it usually needs a support color to play defense, and Emerald's an aggressive pair, not a defensive pair.
All right. Last ditch friends on the other side.
We found it. We found the one way to not die. It's draw 2 bounce effects.
When you draw the answer and you're still sitting there shaking your head that it might all be over.
Yeah, if you're Logan, you actually drew the Jenga, but it's just not enough.
Exactly.
So we're gonna bounce Ursula, and we're gonna bounce either Aladdin or Monstrous Dragon, and we're gonna elongate the game by another turn cycle. But Peterson's deck unable to get back into it at this juncture.
Right. Michael not even gonna have to draw any cards off this match.
All right, we can quest up to 18. We can attack and trade Aladdin for Cheshire Cat and go up to 18 as well.
Right. It is all over but the Cryon.
Singing a Be Prepared. I don't agree with that play, but it is what it is. I feel like an attack with your Aladdin would have done
Right.
pretty well. You know? Just attack.
And now Logan maybe gonna get to keep bouncing this Ursula with the genie.
You know, I said that there was no way out, but there is a way out. It's your opponent casts a Wrath of God that only kills their own stuff. That's a way out.
Exactly. Now that Ursula's back in hand.
Well, I mean, Peterson also knows we have a Maleficent Monster Dragon, right? So they're just going to nom Genie.
See how many turns we can get out of this game.
All right, we got 7 ink. We can play Hans plus Rafiki. We're not technically dead next turn, so I think this is an okay sequence. I don't think playing Mad Hatter is enough.
Right.
I guess you could ink Hans and play Hatter plus Rafiki.
Right, but Logan, the more cards you ink, the further behind you feel if you're not going to have those resources.
All right, Bouncing
And
Monstrous Dragon has consequences.
now
Here's
can we
another one.
draw 2 more Mother Knows Bests off this? Friends on the other side.
We cannot.
Looks like no.
All right, it's going to do it. Logan Peterson going to be defeated here in round number 2. Going to move to 1-1, so still in the tournament. But Michael Hoskins looking good at 2-0. And we're going to play out our hand, but we're just going to go to Hoskins' way, and we're going to quest, and the game's over. So that's maybe my least favorite thing about Lorcana is that
Yes.
you usually pass the turn when you're dead.
Right. I kind of tried to start a movement of, saying check as you pass the turn with lethal lore in play, but people didn't seem to like that.
I like it. I also like maybe implementing chess clocks. I think chess clocks could be a nice thing since you don't really make any decisions on your opponent's turn. It might be a good way to, I don't know. It changes the engine a bit, but I don't really know exactly what the answer is to playing hour-long games of Ruby Amethyst Mirrors where you broom yourself 100 times.